Hey guys, I did a podcast with Dumb Jake and T-Fan 101, where we reviewed the 2007 Transformers movie, and I completely misunderstood the assignment thinking that we were doing a rewatch, not a review. So if you want to see an hour-long podcast featuring me being too dumb to live, there's a link in the description. Also, I did a crossover with Dr. Lockdown, which based on the comments of that video is the best thing that either of us has done in a while. So if you haven't seen that, give it a look. Link down below. And without further ado, it's Legacy Commander Class Magmatron. But first, your likes. Please give, and maybe subscribe. And I am so deeply conflicted about this thing. Every now and then, I'll pick this guy up, take a good long look at it, and go, yes, exactly, this is what I want to see. Transformers just trying to be fun, not trying to be perfect or overly serious or committing to only one identity, just getting weird and wacky with it and saying, yeah, we're toys. All we need to be is fun. And then I'll go to actually handle this thing, and I just go, and there is one thing I want to clear up, because there was an argument I made about this thing before it ever came out that seemed like everyone tried to take the most uncharitable way possible. And that's when I said that I take issue with this thing's parts forming. I got hundreds of comments about that go, it's 3 dinosaurs, it obviously has to parts form, idiot. I thought I was pretty clear about it, but that's not what I mean. I love Siege Omega Supreme and defend that thing's parts forming as necessary because it is several different things at once in alt mode. So I'm obviously not taking issue about the fact that this is 3 dinosaurs who combine into one dude. What I'm talking about is that you leave parts off. You just have to rip off probably about 40% of the plesiosaur and 20 to 15% of the Gigantosaurus and throw them in the trash for as long as this is in robot mode. And yes, that's what the original toy did, but I have news for you. It's been 25 years, a quarter of a century. We should be able to do better than that now. Though given this thing in general, I guess not. And I'm not saying that those parts shouldn't be able to come off and take up their traditional roles of sword and shield, but that should be an option you have, not something mandatory. However, don't go thinking that's my only consideration with this thing. In fact, it's one of my most minor ones. I just needed to explain that in detail because no one wants to give me the benefit of the doubt that I'm not a complete imbecile. So I find that this meets the commander class criteria a lot better than Rodimus did. However, this would not be getting that praise if Rodimus weren't the 3rd commander they ever released. Because if that were the case, I would be saying that there's been a steady trend down in the scale of commanders. Even Ultra Magnus, who is exactly as tall as this, is at least a wide boy. But this figure is doing a lot, so I can look past this. And in terms of look, I obviously despise his banana hammock and bare-assed eyes. Dude looks like a stripper, but this is insane enough to be awesome. There's so much going on. Dude has 4 visible heads, 2 sets of feet, a giant pair of elephant ears, and an incomprehensible cacophony of colors clashing all over him. Like red and green are each other's complements, and green goes well with purple, but it's like they chose the exact wrong shade of green to go with any of the rest of it. And then there's also strong elements of gold. Guy has the colors of a toxic chemical spill in the middle of a homeless encampment in an 80s grindhouse movie. And it somehow doesn't work so hard that it starts to work. This guy looks powerful and crazy and so much fun. Hands down, the thing this does best is just look insane in all the most fun ways. Every time I get angry at this figure, I then look at it as a whole and just go, yeah. It's absolutely sick as hell. But then you get to the rest of it and it's got so many issues. For starters, I absolutely love the Predacon gem in his shoulder. It's been a long time since we last saw these, and I would kill for them on the rest of the Kingdom figures. However, the one in his wing came scuffed as shit. And great, that's only facing forward like 100% of the time. Then there are his knees. These are on ratchets, and normally I'm not all that impressed by ratchets. Like yes, clicky sound good and all, but I usually find that they wouldn't be necessary for a figure to have the correct amount of hold. But here, I am very impressed, because despite having them, his legs still have no hold. This should not be possible. I could understand if the weight was hitting a single one of these legs and that overcoming the ratchets, but both at the same time? These aren't uselessly weak, however, they're still frustrating. But the biggest frustration of the whole figure is just how in its own way it is. You want to turn the head right? Well, you gotta lift up this wing. And if you want to turn it left, you basically can't unless you lift and rotate the opposite one too. The arms can't go down all the way, getting perpetually stuck in this really awkward stance that just looks lame, and it's a chore to even get them down this far because of the ratchets. His waist swivel is clogged up with so much kibble, it's almost useless. For a figure that parts forms so much, they for some reason didn't make it so his tail could, so that's jutting off the back in the most unhelpful ways possible. You have to untransform the legs to get the toe up, and I don't even know why you do this. Why would you intentionally include a step that's only point is to lock out one of the joints that you should want? Hasbro keeps doing this lately, and it's insane. The ankles are also significantly stronger than the knees too, without ratchets. So it's not like it helps keep the figure stable. It is such a chore to interact with this thing because of all the stuff that's absolutely orbiting it. This is like Olympic levels of kibble. Man is going for the gold medal of crap that's in your way. It is rare to find a figure that feels so much like it's sabotaging itself intentionally. The head is pretty good, though I kind of hate how tall the helmet is. It just looks a bit uncanny. Shorten this up just a little and it would be a lot better. And unlike the Beast Wars Megatron, this grimacing face feels a lot more in line with the character, who I can't claim to know all that well, but based on what I've seen of him, he does make this expression pretty consistently. I both like and hate the ears. They are simultaneously goofy and unique to him, so a fun idea, but at the same time, they are also really ugly, and as I said before, heinously in the way of turning the head, of moving the arms, of just posing this thing in general. And again, the figure, while very fun looking, is just in its own path. So I love the look of this thing, but for precisely the reasons that I think a lot of people won't be down for it in the first place. It is a weird, silly abomination that doesn't take any part of itself seriously. However, it probably should have, because so much of this thing is so compromised. And the tragic thing is, I know it would have made me complain a ton, but this thing would have benefited from a lot more parts forming. If you let me remove the side skirts so the arms could go down, remove the tail so it wasn't sticking 5 feet off the back, remove the butt flap so the waist could work, and remove the ears so the head could be clean and turn, then this would have been a lot more functional as a figure. And again, I know that if I lived in the reality where they did that, I would have had no end of complaints about the level of parts forming it was dealing with. So this thing is kind of trapped in a no-win scenario. It's so choked with kibble, the only practical way to deal with that is to have it come off. But it coming off is a problem in and of itself. Maybe they could have found a bunch of ways to make all of it transform more tidily, but that would have taken some extreme doing, probably wouldn't fit the budget, and probably wouldn't be any fun if they did. Though if they said to hell with the shield and incorporated the whole plesiosaur, making the figure bigger like a commander is supposed to be, they might have had the room to make all that work. Anyways, accessories are something. He's got these swords that come off his wings, unfortunately no sword-wielding wrists. He's got some cool purple blast effects in a format that we've seen 100 times now. He's got his shield, which is just the bottom half of the plesiosaur. This is lame. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It's lame. You know what makes a worse shield than a glass window that's part of your own body like Cliff Jumper comes with? A shield that is made of the meat of your own body. And it's got pincer action, I guess. Ooh. Lastly, he's got his tail sword, which you can either just use raw by plugging it into his hand, which looks great, or you can make it worse by putting it in his butthole. Which, yes, I have transformed wrong. Flipping these pieces in makes setting up that part 10 times harder and improves the look exactly 0%. It looks identical with these flipped in or not. Why would I even fucking bother? This has an unscuffed Predacon gem, so at least there's that. Ultimately, he's got a lot of accessories. The swords and blast effects are nice, and I'm glad to have them. Though I'm not sure why the one sword is clear rubber that's been painted when there's no other clear rubber anywhere on this thing, but the last two things are just parts of the dinosaurs that the original toy didn't know what to do with, so they just called them a hilt and a shield. And they suck. They look awful, they're impractical, they're in the way, and they just make things worse. They do what parts forming pieces do. They come off and they go into a bin until I transform it again. Posability is toxically frustrating. Head only swivels, and the ears are such a pain in this aspect. Shoulders pull a 90, but can only go down like 2/3 of the way. Maximum elbows. Wrist swiv and palm action, plus opening hands and a somewhat awkward but not completely useless thumb. The waist swivel only works if you get a shitload of stuff out of the way. Hips are unimpeded forward and collide badly with the kibble back into the side. Incredibly weak, well over 90 knees, and feet that you should not transform properly that have massive pivot, massive toe down, and a massive heel down. This could be so very good if it wasn't always fighting you. It desperately tries not to do what you want it to. Every joint you attempt to move feels like it does so in protest, doing everything in its power to get hung up on anything it can. It's just so frustrating. As for transformation, it's trash, garbage, shit that brings all the joy of an itchy, unwiped asshole. Just starting it is unfun, as it takes way too much force to separate the torso, and putting all of this together for robot mode is really no better. I have one good thing to say about it, and that's when you transform the head, it turns into a Penanggalan floating around with its guts hanging out, and I find that hilarious. At least the Quetzalcoatlus is easy to transform. However, the Gigantosaurus is a pain in the ass of extremely over-tight tolerances that barely fit together, that will hurt your hands to click apart and together, as well as it's both a boring and forgettable conversion, where almost every time I'm guaranteed to swivel something the wrong way, often multiple somethings. And the Plesiosaur is almost worse. There are even fewer steps and much less to get wrong, and yet somehow I always try to use the arms incorrectly anyways. And this thing has a far heavier reliance on parts forming. Plus, it's got a horrible case of the Play-Doh factor. Perhaps one of the worst I've ever handled. It is mind-numbing misery to try and get this part to come together. Once it's really together, it's together, but squishing it into the correct place makes me hate being a Transformers fan. And the result is 3 pretty successful alt modes. The worst one has got to be the Gigantosaurus. It hilariously is the least posing of any of them, with a mouth that barely opens, simply due to bad decisions in the sculpting that I'm tempted to take a knife to try and resolve. And is really just skating by on the robot mode legs. However, this would still be one of the most posable T-Rex-like dino toys of all time. The mouth is, no matter what, a stupid bummer, however. The Quetzalcoatlus is far better on the posing, though the figure's probably not big enough for one, and the head is a bit goofy looking, but honestly this just does everything you want a dino like this to do. With articulated claws, multi-jointed legs, good wings that got the flappy action, and a mouth that opens like 30 times wider than the Gigantosaurus. But my favorite by a country mile is the Plesiosaur. The neck is so posable and full of character. When I have this thing in its dino modes, I will constantly pick this one up and just pose the head in different ways. This thing rocks, and it's very fun to just flip it into the laughing seagull pose. However, I do hate how much it looks like this thing was intentionally designed to devour its own cloaca. So this is a very good set of dino modes, with probably way fewer frustrations than the robot mode. But if I want toys of these dinosaurs, I can just buy those. And going between the 2, or is it 4 forms of this thing, is such a pain in the ass that I would probably rather buy models than a Transformer. And I am not going into this stupid fucking Chimera mode. What's that? A thing that looks awful, has absolutely no utility, is basically just the stupid Dino Megazord's tank mode that is literally never useful, but is even worse here, and according to everyone I've seen, is even less fun to transform this thing into? Oh, sign me the hell up! For a hammer to smash this thing with! Yeah, I don't think this thing is worth it. The strength of this figure is just how much it wants to be fun, and it's just not. This thing is choking on its kibble worse than I've ever seen before. Everything I want to do with this figure, I feel like I have to move 3 things out of the way. It's just so annoying. And then the transformation is torture. One of those moments where I go, man, do I really have to make this video? A process I would never engage with for fun. It's worse into its alt modes, but it's not good for robot mode either. Were it just the Gigantosaurus, it wouldn't be so terrible. But the Plesiosaur is unbearable. I hate this transformation like little else. And then the alt modes are, again, better than the robot mode, but I didn't spend $90 to buy a bunch of dinosaurs. I wanted to buy a transformer. But what good is a transformer who is only useful as a statue or a couple of dinosaurs, and everything else just makes you wish you never wasted the money? There are cool merits to this, and every now and then I look at this thing and I feel a swell in my chest of, hell yes, this is what we need as a community. Weird bullshit. And then I mess with this thing and I just feel part of my soul die. I don't think that Hasbro tried to take us for a ride with this one. They wanted to give us our money's worth. But even still, I don't think you should waste your cash on this one. And before we go, let's thank a patron. And this time it's Shiny Toy Robots with a Mezco TMNT set. Kind of a cheat to include 4 figures in one, but I'll allow it. I've never been a big turtle head, but even I can see that these look really excellent. The texturing, the painting, the characterful expressions, the actual cloth and leather goods. These are firing on all cylinders, and they look like amazingly high-quality renditions of the turtles. And that's not half what I have to say, but it's enough what I have to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.